All right, let's dive into Sun Tzu's Art of War. This book has been studied by leaders and strategists for centuries, and the excerpts you sent over were really fascinating. I can't wait to unpack this with you.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
The Art of War isn't just an ancient military manual.
Right.
It's a collection of, well, almost like philosophical verses with commentaries from later military minds woven in.
Okay, interesting. So like a combination of like original writing and then sort of people interpreting it over time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Okay. Well, our mission today is to try to distill those core ideas from the Art of War and see how they apply beyond just the battlefield and maybe spark some aha moments for our listeners.
You'll be surprised how relevant Sun Tzu is even in the 21st century.
I bet, yeah. To kick things off, let's set the stage. I mean, this wasn't just some philosopher sitting in an armchair, right?
No.
This guy was a real general.
Right. He lived in the 5th century BC in ancient China. And he helped this small state, the state of Wu, achieve some pretty stunning victories.
Okay, so we're talking about a real military leader.
Oh yeah, very much so.
A strategist.
And there's this, well, rather shocking story about him. It illustrates his commitment to discipline. So to prove a point to the king of Wu, he actually beheaded the king's favorite concubines.
He beheaded the king's, concubines. I mean, that's a bit intense, even for ancient China.
Yeah, it's a pretty extreme example.
Wow, okay.
The king had tasked him with training the concubines into a fighting force. So, to establish his authority and to demonstrate the importance of obedience, he enforced his commands, even if it meant executing those who disobeyed.
Okay.
Which is exactly what he did.
So he was not messing around when it came to discipline.
Not at all.
Wow. So how does that tie into his actual military strategy?
Well, his Art of War outlines 5 fundamental factors.
Okay.
And these are crucial for success.
Okay.
Those are moral influence, weather, terrain, command, and doctrine.
Okay, so he's taking into account all sorts of things, not just like who has the most guys on the field or anything.
No.
But all these other factors.
He emphasizes that knowing yourself and knowing your enemy,
Yeah.
well, that's just the beginning.
Okay.
You also need to understand the environment, the timing, and the qualities of a good leader.
So it's almost like don't charge in blindly.
Exactly.
Do your homework first.
Yeah, very much so. A key part of that homework is understanding this interplay between what he calls Cheng and Qi, direct and indirect tactics.
Yeah.
So he's basically saying you need to know when to strike head on and when to maneuver subtly. This concept, it's woven throughout the Art of War, and it's incredibly relevant even today.
Okay, interesting. So if Cheng is going in for the kill, then Qi is more about outsmarting your opponent.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Okay. I mean, how does that play out in a real world situation?
Well, imagine you're in a tough negotiation.
Right.
So Cheng might be presenting a strong opening offer, while Qi could involve subtly influencing the other party's perception of their options. So it's all about being adaptable and choosing the right approach at the right time. And here's where it gets really interesting. Sun Tzu believed that the ultimate goal is to achieve victory without actually fighting.
Wait, what? Win without fighting? How is that even possible?
That's the brilliance of Sun Tzu.
Okay.
He argues that you can achieve your objective through strategic maneuvering, through diplomacy, and intelligence. By thoroughly understanding the situation, your opponent, and yourself, you can often create conditions where your opponent yields without a single battle.
Okay. So it's almost like being so prepared and in control that your opponent just has no choice but to back down?
Precisely.
Okay.
It's about maximizing your strengths, exploiting your opponent's weaknesses, and choosing your battles wisely. He also stresses the importance of ending conflict swiftly to avoid depleting resources and morale. And in fact, he even advocates for using the conquered foe to augment your own strength.
Okay. So what does he mean by using the conquered foe? That sounds kind of ruthless.
It might sound harsh, but he's actually talking about integrating the defeated enemy into your own ranks, assimilating their resources, and, well, turning potential resistance into an asset.
Interesting.
It's not always about brute force. Think about it like winning over the hearts and minds of people in conquered territories.
Oh, okay.
That's a way of using the conquered foe to establish long-term stability.
Okay. Gotcha.
So it's more about strategic absorption than just crushing everyone in your path.
Okay.
Think about it like achieving victory on multiple levels: military, political, and even psychological. And this all feeds into Sun Tzu's concept of supreme excellence.
Okay.
which is breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting.
Now, that's a concept that has definitely resonated throughout history, and we've seen that over and over.
Absolutely. I mean, think about Gandhi's nonviolent resistance movement or successful diplomatic negotiations that prevent wars. Even in the business world, a company can outmaneuver its competitors without engaging in a head-on confrontation.
So winning without fighting isn't just some idealistic notion.
Yeah.
It's a proven strategy. And this is making me think, how much of this wisdom that we're talking about could we apply in our own lives, even if we're not, generals or CEOs?
Well, think about a tough negotiation at work or even a conflict with a loved one.
Yeah.
Sun Tzu is encouraging us to think strategically in all aspects of life. Carefully assess our goals, understand the landscape, and choose our actions intentionally.
So this is starting to feel less like an ancient military text and more like a life strategy manual. And we're just getting started. I'm really curious to explore what he had to say about terrain.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it sounds like mountains and valleys and, where to put your armies. But I'm guessing it's a lot more than that, right?
Oh, absolutely. He used these different types of terrain as metaphors for different situations you might encounter.
So we're not just talking about literal hills and valleys here.
No, not at all. He talks about things like dispersive ground, where soldiers are close to home, and facile ground that's easy to move through, contentious ground that everyone wants to control. It goes on and on.
Okay.
But these are really metaphors for different challenges and opportunities you might face, whether it's at work, in your personal life, all sorts of places.
So contentious ground could be like that high stakes project at work that everyone's fighting over.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Or a difficult conversation that you need to have with someone.
Right.
It's all about understanding the challenges and opportunities presented by different landscapes and then using that awareness to your advantage.
Okay, cool.
And he uses some really captivating stories to illustrate this.
Oh.
Like, take the tale of General Pan Chao's deception of the kings of Khotan and Kucha.
Ooh, story time. I love stories. Okay, lay it on me.
So picture this. Pan Chao is a Chinese general who is sent to quell unrest in this area, the Tarim Basin.
Okay.
Now, this region has lots of little kingdoms, and he's facing this coalition of forces led by the kings of Khotan and Kucha. Now, knowing he's outnumbered, Pan Chao uses cunning and deception to divide his enemies and conquer them.
Clever. Okay.
Well, he starts by pretending to be weak, which makes the king of Kucha overconfident.
Classic move.
Then he uses this clever ruse to make it seem like his army is going to retreat.
Okay.
But secretly, he plans a surprise attack.
Oh, sneaky.
He intentionally leaks a false plan, letting the kings of Khotan and Kucha believe he's retreating in two separate directions. This plays on their rivalry and desire for individual glory. They both rush off to try to claim an easy victory, leaving their forces vulnerable.
And that's when he strikes.
Exactly. He seizes the opportunity and launches this devastating attack on the remaining enemy forces, crushing them and solidifying his control over the region.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It really shows how, understanding your opponent's psychology can be just as important as having, a strong army.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Okay. And this kind of leads us to another key theme in Sun Tzu's Art of War, and that's the power of deception and intelligence gathering.
Before we get into that, where can I find this story about Pan Chao?
Oh.
It sounds like an epic tale.
It is. Unfortunately, it wasn't in the excerpts that you sent.
Okay.
But you can find it in historical accounts of the Han Dynasty, specifically in the Book of the Later Han.
Okay, got it. I'll add that to my reading list.
Okay.
But let's get back to spies and deception. Things get a little ethically tricky here, right? How much deception is acceptable?
It definitely raises some important questions.
Yeah.
Sun Tzu talks about 5 types of spies: local spies, inward spies, converted spies, doomed spies, and surviving spies.
5 types. That's a whole spy network. Okay, break it down for me. What's the difference between all these types?
So local spies are those recruited from the enemy's territory.
Oh.
People who know the area and its inhabitants. Inward spies are officials within the enemy's ranks who you've persuaded to betray their side. Converted spies are enemy spies that you've captured and then turned to work for you. Doomed spies are those you deliberately feed false information to, allow them to be captured, and mislead the enemy. And surviving spies are sent back to the enemy with reports designed to deceive them.
Wow, it's like a whole underground world of information and misinformation. Kind of scary, honestly.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But think about how this translates to the modern world.
Okay.
We have competitive intelligence, market research, even just reading body language in a negotiation. It's all about understanding the motivations and strategies of those that you're dealing with, whether it's business, politics, personal relationships, you name it.
So Sun Tzu is basically saying always be one step ahead. But to do that, you need good intel.
You got it. And it's not just about the raw information. It's about analysis, synthesis, and understanding the implications.
That's something I definitely struggle with, to be honest. I mean, you can have all the data in the world, but if you don't know what to do with it, it's useless.
That's a great point. It's not just about the raw information. It's about analysis, synthesis, and understanding the implications. And speaking of understanding, Sun Tzu also had a lot to say about leadership.
Right. Which is at the heart of it all, really.
It is.
So what makes a great leader, or I guess in Sun Tzu's terms, a great general?
Well, he warns against 5 fatal flaws.
Yeah.
Recklessness, cowardice, a hasty temper, a delicacy of honor, and over-solicitude for his men.
Okay. And those can all lead to bad decisions or lost opportunities.
They absolutely can.
Okay.
And ultimately defeat.
Wow. Those flaws, I mean, those sound pretty human, actually. And some of them might even seem like positive qualities at first glance, like having a sense of honor or caring for your people.
Absolutely. But in the context of war, even in a lot of situations today, those qualities can be twisted. They can be taken to an extreme.
Yeah, okay, I see what you mean. So a leader who is too reckless might just charge into battle without any planning.
Yeah.
And then somebody who's too concerned with honor might be easy to manipulate.
Yeah, exactly. And a leader who's too protective of their troops might hesitate to make tough decisions.
So it's all about balance, having those qualities, but also being able to temper them with reason and strategic thinking.
Exactly. Along with avoiding those flaws, Sun Tzu also emphasizes cultivating unity and high morale within your team. He highlights examples of great leaders like Wang Qin, who focused on building strong bonds between soldiers and inspiring them with a shared sense of purpose.
So are there specific ways that leaders, even outside the military, can foster that kind of unity and motivation in their teams?
Oh, absolutely. One way is through clear and open communication, making sure everyone understands the goals and how their role contributes to the bigger picture. Building a sense of trust and mutual respect is crucial.
Okay.
As is recognizing and rewarding individual and team achievements.
So it's not just about barking orders.
No.
It's about creating a culture where people feel valued and motivated and they're all part of the mission.
Precisely. Sun Tzu understood that the human element is just as important as any strategic or tactical consideration.
So we were just talking about the human element. Sun Tzu really recognized that even with the best strategies, you need a motivated team.
Yeah, absolutely. And this actually leads into another key part of his thinking. Understanding the terrain.
Yeah, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. The different types of terrain, right?
Right.
Used as metaphors for situations we might encounter.
Exactly. But, he actually defines 9 specific types of battlegrounds.
9.
Each with their own challenges and opportunities.
Wow, that's a lot to keep track of.
It can be a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
But remember, he's using these battlegrounds as metaphors, right?
That's right.
For different strategic situations.
So maybe instead of listing all 9, we could just focus on a couple that really resonate with, modern life.
Yeah. That's a great idea. Let's talk about contentious ground for a second.
Okay, remind me, what's contentious ground all about?
Well, it's basically any situation where everyone wants to be in control.
Okay.
Think about that, like high-stakes project at work that everyone's vying for.
Oh, yeah. Or a family argument where everyone wants to have the last word.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in these types of situations, Sun Tzu advises caution.
Okay.
Careful planning. He stresses the importance of building alliances and really avoiding rash actions that could jeopardize your position.
So it's kind of like being in a high-pressure negotiation. You have to be strategic. You don't want to make any impulsive moves.
Exactly. Another type of terrain that I think is particularly relevant is serious ground.
Okay. What makes this terrain serious?
Well, it's basically the point of no return.
Okay.
When you've committed significant resources.
Okay.
And retreat is difficult, or maybe even impossible.
Oh, that sounds intense.
Yeah, it is.
Like being deep in enemy territory with no easy way out.
Yeah. And, Sun Tzu, he advises being extra careful in this situation.
Yeah.
It's about securing your supply lines, maintaining your momentum, and avoiding any unnecessary risks.
It makes me think about, entrepreneurs who've invested everything in a new venture.
Yeah.
Or maybe even someone in a committed relationship who's facing a major challenge. There's no turning back.
Right.
So they need to be really strategic and resilient.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is where Sun Tzu's emphasis on discipline, I think, really comes into play.
Yeah. We were talking about that earlier. His kind of a pretty intense view on discipline. What does that look like, practically speaking?
Well, it's about self-control,
Okay.
focus, the ability to execute your plans even when things are tough.
So it's not just about blindly following orders.
No.
It's about having that inner strength, right?
Right.
To stick to the plan, make tough choices when you need to.
Exactly. That mental fortitude that helps you resist distractions, persevere through challenges, and ultimately achieve your goals.
And I'm guessing this ties back into, the whole deception thing that we were talking about earlier.
It absolutely does. Deception, when used strategically, can be a very powerful tool for navigating these tricky terrains.
But we also talked about the ethics of deception. I mean, how do you reconcile that with being like a good leader?
Yeah. That's a really good point. I think it's important to distinguish between different types of deception.
Okay.
Sun Tzu wasn't advocating for lying or manipulating people
Right.
for personal gain.
Okay.
He talked about using deception to conceal your strengths, maybe exaggerate your weaknesses, mislead the enemy about your intentions.
Right.
But he also emphasized the importance of integrity and trustworthiness when you're dealing with your own team,
Okay.
your own allies.
So it's about being strategic and ethical with your deception.
Exactly. And remember, Sun Tzu's ultimate goal was to achieve victory without fighting.
Right.
So if you can use deception to outmaneuver your opponent and avoid that costly battle, well, wouldn't that be considered ethical?
Yeah, I see your point. It's about minimizing harm and achieving the best possible outcome.
Precisely. And, in everyday situations, I think it's more about just being aware of how perception can be manipulated,
Okay.
both by ourselves and by others.
Yeah.
Understanding the power of framing, storytelling, and just strategic communication.
So less about being a master manipulator and more about being savvy
Right.
and just understanding how communication works.
Exactly. Developing a critical eye, especially when information is being used to influence or persuade.
Which brings us back to intelligence gathering. Sun Tzu really emphasized, having good intel. He had that whole system with the 5 types of spies.
Yeah. And while we might not be using doomed spies in our daily lives, the underlying principle is still incredibly valuable. Seeking information from multiple sources, verifying its accuracy, and then using it strategically.
It's like doing your research before making a big decision.
Yeah.
Or getting feedback from a lot of different people before launching a new product.
Exactly. It's about gathering different perspectives, challenging your assumptions, and making sure you're not operating on incomplete information.
Right. Or biased information.
Right.
This is making me realize how much our modern world is kind of like this giant, complex battlefield. And Sun Tzu's principles, you can apply them to so many different situations.
He was definitely ahead of his time.
Yeah.
And there's one more key principle that I think is absolutely crucial for navigating this modern battlefield, and that's timing.
Okay.
Soon, he talks a lot about waiting for the right moment to act, striking when the enemy is vulnerable, and really avoiding hasty or impulsive decisions.
So it's not just knowing what to do, it's knowing when to do it.
Exactly.
Waiting for the perfect wave to catch.
Yeah.
Or launching a product at the right time to capture market share.
Exactly. Great analogies. It's that art of seizing the opportune moment, that perfect alignment of circumstances where your actions are going to have the greatest impact.
Makes me think about how often, we just rush into things, we make decisions based on incomplete information, or we react impulsively.
We've all been there.
Oh, yeah.
But, Sun Tzu would encourage us to learn from those experiences and develop a greater awareness of how timing can affect our successes and failures.
So to recap, we've got these 5 key takeaways from Sun Tzu: adaptability, deception, choosing our battles wisely, discipline, and timing. And of course, the whole idea of winning without fighting, that's a lot to process, but it's incredibly insightful.
It is. And, we've only just scratched the surface of what Sun Tzu has to offer.
Right.
There's so much more to explore.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. 5 fundamental factors. The 9 types of terrain.
Right.
The power of deception. What else can we learn from Sun Tzu?
Well, there's one more aspect we haven't touched on yet.
Okay.
And that's adaptability. This is crucial for success no matter what field you're in.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we live in a world that's like constantly changing, right? So being able to adapt is essential.
Absolutely.
But what does Sun Tzu actually say about adaptability?
Well, he compares a skilled leader to water.
Okay.
Water, it flows around obstacles, it adapts to the shape of its container, and it always finds a way to reach its destination.
I like that. It's a good analogy.
And Sun Tzu stresses that no two battles are the same. A leader who tries to apply the same tactics in every situation, well, they're bound to fail. There are no fixed formations in war, just as there are no constant conditions in nature.
He sounds way ahead of his time. I mean, this idea of adaptability, it's so relevant to like our modern world, especially in fields like business and technology.
Oh, absolutely. And this adaptability goes beyond just reacting to external circumstances.
Okay.
Sun Tzu also emphasized the importance of adapting to your opponent.
So it's about understanding their strengths and weaknesses.
Yes,
And looking for ways to outmaneuver them.
exactly. Remember that story we discussed about General Pan Chao?
Oh, yeah, yeah. How he deceived the kings of Khotan and Kucha.
Yes.
That was a classic example of outsmarting the opponent.
It's a perfect example of how adaptability and a little bit of cunning can help you overcome seemingly impossible odds.
It's kind of inspiring, you know? It shows that even when you're up against a bigger, stronger opponent, you can still win if you're strategic and adaptable.
That's the essence of Sun Tzu's message. It's about empowering leaders, giving them the tools and the mindset to achieve victory. And not just in war, but in all aspects of life.
So we've got adaptability, we've got deception, choosing your battles wisely, discipline, timing,
Yeah.
and of course that overarching goal of winning without fighting. Right.
Anything else we should add to our Sun Tzu toolkit?
Well, there's one crucial element we can't overlook, and that's unity
Okay.
and high morale.
Okay.
Sun Tzu believed that a well-disciplined, highly motivated team, well, they're far more effective than a larger but less cohesive force.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, if your team is united, they're going to be more resilient, they'll work harder, they're more likely to achieve their goals. But how do you cultivate that sense of unity?
Well, Sun Tzu highlights the importance of communication.
Okay.
Clear communication. Everyone needs to understand the goals and how their individual role contributes to the bigger picture.
Right, so everyone feels like they're part of it.
Exactly. You also need to build a sense of trust and mutual respect within the team.
It's about creating a culture where people feel valued and connected to that shared purpose. Precisely. Sun Tzu understood that the human element was just as important as any strategic or tactical consideration. And, all of this comes back to his most fundamental principle. Know thy enemy and know thyself.
Yeah, that classic wisdom, right? Know yourself and know your opponent.
It's the foundation of strategic thinking. I mean, without a deep understanding of your own strengths and weaknesses, as well as those of your opponent, well, you're just fighting blind. And this doesn't just apply to war. It applies to any competitive situation.
Business negotiations, political campaigns.
Yeah.
I mean, even personal relationships, right?
Absolutely. Understanding yourself and the other party is crucial.
Sun Tzu's Art of War, I mean, it's really a guide to understanding human nature, conflict,
Yeah.
and the principles of strategic thinking.
It really is. And it's remarkable how relevant those principles are today.
I mean, all these centuries later,
Sun Tzu's wisdom truly stands the test of time.
this has been a great deep dive. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on strategy, leadership, even on myself.
Well, it's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
Yeah. And to our listeners, I highly recommend checking out Sun Tzu's Art of War.
Yeah.
See how these principles can help you achieve your own victories no matter what battlefield you're facing.
And remember, the greatest victory is the one achieved without fighting. So go forth and conquer, strategically and peacefully.